Welcome back to the other side of change, only on the Black Star Network. I'm Brea Baker. With me, as always, is my beautiful co-host Jamira. Today, we're going to be talking about Palestine again because we cannot shut up about Palestine. We're going to be talking about the way that Israel's siege has resulted in a man-made famine. We all need to be doing so much more to get out of this.
Yeah, we've alluded to this topic many times on this show, and we wanted to dedicate an entire episode to really focusing on the fact that even more importantly now than ever, people of all ages are starving because Israel is blocking aid and destroying critical infrastructure across Gaza and impacting the Palestinian movement and impacting the Palestinian community. And moms are too malnourished to produce breast milk to feed their babies, and formula is not available or too expensive to get access to. We're going to talk about that in details, and I'm super excited for our guests to really help to break down this issue for those who are listening and to talk about Black solidarity in regards to the Palestinian movement and making sure that we are holding our elected officials accountable to put pressure on the government of Israel to stop these heinous crimes that are impacting the lives of so many people. So, but first, as always, we're going to jump into the headlines and talk about other issues that are also impacting us and making each and every one of our lives that much harder every single day.
Yeah. Well, first headline is the mass shooting in New York City that happened now a couple weeks ago. Five people, including gunmen, were killed in the shooting. The shooting did take place in a big corporate office, and I think Midtown. And so there were a lot of comparisons and like, is this a Luigi moment all over again? According to like messages that the gunman left behind, he was targeting the NFL and ended up on the wrong floor. But you know, there's a lot of theories, some of them conspiracy theories, some of them that I don't know. I'm like, yeah, how you
exactly
on the Black stuff? Like, I don't know. It's just there's some realness to it, but I do think that it's just proving that gun violence, you know, even if the media are not talking about it, is very, very real. Mass shootings are still happening all the time in small towns, in big cities, and everywhere in between.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's a reminder that, you know, folks should not have access to military weapons in this country. And we continue to eliminate barriers to that. The fact that this man was able to drive cross country, park his car in the middle of New York and walk a handful of steps and no one stops him. I mean, I lived in New York and I just don't understand how that happened. And the lack of the Trump administration to have any real solutions to kind of address the growing concern around gun violence and its implications. But to your point, there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there, especially that's going to happen when you have a government that doesn't provide you all the information. People are going to create their own narratives about what's actually happening. But I will hold back my opinion until more data comes out there. But what I will say is that, you know, this is a prime example that people are fed up and are taking extreme measures to address the issues that are directly impacting them. And I can't imagine how this can continue to escalate when people are shut out of resources that the federal government continues to, limit their ability to support themselves and support their families. So.
Yeah. And before we jump to the next headline, I think the reason that the government has had no solutions to offer is because their solution is over policing. But NYPD is already one of the most heavily funded, over policed, militarized police departments in the nation, if not in the world. And so how do you say that in a city like New York that is supposed to have billions of dollars to address this, that this could happen in the middle of Midtown, that this was not in some because they love to claim that gun violence only affects Black and brown communities. And like it's always gangs, but like this happened in the middle of lily white Midtown. And where was NYPD to stop it? What is all the money doing? So like I think they don't even want to have to grapple with the fact that, kind of like with Uvalde, it was like hopefully people don't ask why police are so inept, because then it will actually revive conversations around, well, if they're not keeping us safe, then let's use the money in other ways.
Yeah, and to be honest, when I was at work when I first heard the story, and I do this all the time where like I hear a story like something like that, and I'm like, please, I hope he's not black. Please, I hope they're not black, because we know that one example will only empower the infrastructure or the systems of oppression to kind of continue to swoop in and try to continue to police the lives of black folks. So I was highly disappointed when I saw the first like image, and I was like, oh God, that's the last thing we need in New York right now, like the last thing. But yeah, the investigation is ongoing, but we're going to continue to send thoughts and prayers to the families impacted, because no one should lose their life to the barrel of a gun in this country. But that's happening more and more, and it has no gender, no class, no race. People of all social economic classes and races are being impacted by gun violence, and we're seeing that every single day. 30,000 Americans die every single day to gun violence. 300,000 more are injured. So it's a massive issue. In regards to our next headline, you've all probably heard that Texas is in the process of doing a hostile takeover by redistricting the states, and its implications could be devastating to the Black communities. What many people don't realize is that there are more actual registered Democrats in the state of Texas than there are registered Republicans. And yet Republicans have more seats in the House of Representatives and in Congress, in the Senate than the Democratic Party. And so what we're now seeing is Texas trying to carve out an additional 5 districts that will enable for them to maintain control of the House in the midterm election, because they know that their policies are not popular, and the only way to continue to maintain control is a hostile takeover. And we're seeing it. So I'm nervous. I live in California, and we see Gavin Newsom also making threats. But this is a job for Congress to step in and do something. We know that Congress is not very smart, so we'll see if they step in and actually like raise the alarm.
Yeah, you said that part right. Holding my breath, no, not gonna hold my breath.
That part.
Do anything, but it's just also I think what has been mind-blowing about this situation is that to see Trump like threaten to weaponize the FBI, and Republicans saying, we're gonna put out arrest warrants for them and all of this other stuff, and I'm like, wasn't a Democrat just assassinated on U.S. soil? I'm forgetting which state this happened in, but didn't that happen just like months ago? And it feels like it was so brushed under the rug. And it's like, I'm sorry, am I living through a scandal episode? Like, I feel like Olivia Pope would have had more to say and do about that, but they're more concerned about Texas Democrats who are holding the line on this redistricting situation. So it's just very fascinating what elicits this urgent response and what goes ignored, especially in the context of where we're going to be talking about Palestine. Like, people are dying, people are starving, and what is most important to the Trump administration and Texas Republicans is that Texas Democrats want to get rid of gerrymandering, and they're just like, this is treason. Like it's just it's wild to see them go in such a frenzy. So
especially when it's like the easiest way to win over your constituents is maybe doing something that benefits your constituents, maybe not, coddle to the Trump administration and take away, some of their most basic services, maybe not, hand millions of dollars over to an apartheid regime. I don't know. I just feel like there's so many other things that would have enabled the Republicans to gain more seats. But instead they are looking to do a hostile takeover, and then are mad when Democrats vacate the state in order to not to give them quorum. And now they're being attacked, and now the FBI is going to be sent after them. But let's remember that this is the same party where Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, decided to shut down and end session early to send folks back to their states when it was up to discuss the Epstein files. Let's not forget that in the great state of Texas, what is his name? He's a senator. He left the state twice when there was a natural disaster. Was it Ted Cruz?
Jack Abbott did it too. Ted Cruz definitely did it.
Ted Cruz is constantly on a plane, on a boat, on a flight out of Texas in the worst of times. So the delusion of the party continues to not surprise me in the least.
Yeah. Delusion is right. My next headline is gonna sound a little silly, but it's actually insane. And I will say I was there when this happened.
Really?
the first instance of it happening, because it's happened several times, at the Atlanta Dream WNBA game, a lime green dildo was thrown onto the court mid-game. And it was so confusing because we saw something fly. And when they like pull it out into the air and we're like, is that a dildo? It was just like, what is happening? And it has happened at 2 or 3 games since that incident when I was there to see it happen. And so people were like, okay, is this like a hate crime? Like a dildo on the floor for a league that is predominantly Black and queer? Like what is this?
Yeah.
Come to find out, this is all a crypto scheme. And there is a new meme coin called the Green Dildo. And Jesus so they Christ. Are throwing dildos to build news buzz so that their meme coin will spike and that these like crypto bros will make money. We live in such an unserious world.
But also, because when I first heard the story, I was like, wait, I can barely get a purse longer than a cup size in a stadium. How are these folks getting green dildos
and
in
that's
instead of a stadium?
Why we're talking about. And when we didn't understand what was happening, she was convinced, not to get too explicit, that someone had to wear it in because they don't let you in with these big bags.
Excuse me.
Someone had to have worn it in.
Is this the of change after dark? What is happening?
I don't know what's happening. I truly do feel like I'm in some weird Sims reality where it's like very serious stuff is happening on one end, but then like someone's doing some weird stuff over here and it's like such a distraction and you're like, wait, dildos, but also famine, but also like genocide, but also Trump and the Rose Garden. Like everything is so
serious but unserious. Yeah. And I mean, and what people aren't talking enough about is that this prank is like rape culture, right? Like this is in every single way. Throwing dildos at professional athletes at a basketball game is rape culture. It is like sexualizing women in a way in which they have not asked to be sexualized. It's just, and the fact that
to build awareness for your meme coin, you chose women's basketball game.
Intentionally.
That's why I was saying when it first happened, I was like, is this a hate crime? Are they targeting a specific player? And it just keeps happening exclusively at women's basketball games. So you're so spot on about that. There's definitely this convergence of capitalism and I'm going to make money by any means necessary. And the people I'm going to make money at the expense of are going to be the most vulnerable among us: queer, Black women, non-binary Black folks. And like, while they're trying to do their job, they have to like pause these games so that referees can like get dildos off the floor. Like it's actually.
But also, God forbid someone get hurt, right? Like you're throwing an object from a height that is unknown, right? And the speed in which that, like, it could hurt somebody. Yeah, I mean, if you're doing this, you're lame. You're lame in every way. Just wanted to put that out there. You're an absolute lame, and you're perpetuating rape culture. Like it's so unnecessary. Yeah, because also you could get publicity in other ways. But why is the symbol for your meme coin a green dildo? Like, help me, you know? On that note, we have one more headline. If you all might have heard, the State Department is now potentially requiring visa applicants to post a bond of up to $15,000. Yo, America is a casino. I read that and I was just like, oh, we're about to destroy our tourist industry, because a lot of people save up for years to be able to finally come to America and like to visit New York and go to Disneyland and go to LA. And you're asking people to, if they're coming on a business or a tourist visa, to post a bond of up to $15,000 to enter the United States. Is crazy, and it's going to make it so unaffordable and unattainable for so many people. And I just feel like it's not a very thought out plan. Like it's, they're going to pilot it for 12 months. And I'm curious to see what impact that is going to have, especially when people around the world are being a little bit more critical about how they spend their dollars and like their disposable income. But Trump administration sometimes has to
in America I wouldn't come to America at all. And what's frustrating too is that other countries, of course, are going to say, well, if that's how you're going to treat our citizens, we'll return the favor. I remember being able to travel to Brazil without a visa. I remember to be able to go many places without a visa. And a lot of these nations are changing their visa restrictions for American citizens and saying, I think to get a Brazilian visa now to travel there just for tourism, not for business or school or anything else, you have to provide bank statements and like prove that your accounts have a certain amount in it. And I just hate this closing down of the borders, because I am someone who believes in free movement and that we should all be able to explore this beautiful planet we are inhabiting. And the fact that where you are born can dictate what country will let you in, how much documentation they need from you, whether they're going to require essentially a ransom, because that's what this feels like. $15,000 bond to travel somewhere feels like a ransom. All in the name of preventing illegal immigration. Like, it's just...
But that's the thing. It's not actually, the problem is not being tackled, right? So this bond would only apply to citizens of countries that are not enrolled in the visa waiver program, which enables for travel for business and tourism up to 90 days. Most of these countries who are part of that program are Europe, right? Asia, Middle East. But people who are going to be impacted by this having to post a bond are going to be Black countries, right? Are going to be Hispanic countries, right? This is intentionally the Trump administration in some ways doing his Muslim ban, extending the free flow of movement from brown and Black communities. And it's a joke in many ways that I think is going to have devastating implications for cities like New York, LA, Vegas, right? That relies heavily on the tourist industry.
Yeah, we got to get this orange monster out of here. But
don't forget his sidekick. His sidekicks, they all have to go together. But with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. You are watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change. We just finished unpacking the latest headlines. Now it's time to get serious and talk about Palestine, how the international community is failing to meet this moment.
Couldn't agree more. Everything what Israel is doing right now to the Palestinian people is not only evil, it is cruel and it is coordinated. It started with bombs and bullets that was rightfully decried by the international community that is now taking the lives, what we know so far to be 60,000 Palestinians, according to the United Nations. It's the United Nations Relief and Work Agencies for the Palestinian Refugees have reported that number that have come directly from the United Nations. But we are currently seeing that more and more people continue to die and be what we call online unalived faster and faster due to this genocide that has now become almost 2 years in the making, if not decades in the making. And as we speak, 85,000 Gazans are now in the 5th stage of malnutrition. And we know this is irreversible. So this is going to not only impact the lives of those currently living, but future generations. We can't walk the impact of what is already happening back. All we can do is try to figure out how we can best stop the onslaught.
Yeah. And we cannot underestimate there's no way to under discuss what is going on and to overplay it. I mean, it's horrifying to watch people who have survived the bombardments, the forced expulsion, over policing, the trauma of the last 2 years, and as you said, the decades before, to now be struggling to feed themselves and their loved ones. And none of this is accidental. A major part of the problem is that Israel controls all food, water, and really anything entering in or near Palestine. So people have been subjected to insane price gouging. Here's some of the worst examples of that. Rice used to be 2 shekels, 2.40 shekels per kilo. It's now 45 shekels for the same kilo. Flour that used to be 12 cents per kilo is now over 60 shekels. Baby formula has become nearly impossible to source for the newborns and the children, but their parents can also not create the milk, as Jamira said earlier. It is just, it is something that keeps me up at night as a young and new mom, as someone who's pregnant right now, to understand that out of things completely beyond your control are meaning that your child's ribs are protruding, that they are literally dying a slow death because they have no nourishment in their bodies.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about, human rights, civil rights, international law, but these are crimes against humanity. And on top of that, the international aid that is being blocked at all entrances into the country by the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, leading some to drop aid from helicopters and parachutes as the only way to ensure that it makes it within the Palestinian borders. Even this is dehumanizing, right? Because aid drops by air are incredibly heavy and have been known to fall on tents and unsuspected people, but also forces Palestinians to need to race towards these falling carts of food and water with no ability to have any sort of dignity and respect for dignity for themselves. Thousands have been injured or are killed just in the search of food and relief aid. And the images coming out of Gaza is just, it's devastating to watch, and it feels very hopeless. And at times I have to stop myself from, feeling helpless and that thinking I can't do anything. We all have a role to play, and there's things that we can do to push back against this.
Yeah, exactly. And that word you said, dignity, it is such an important aspect of this conversation. It's bad enough to be starving to death, but for your only source of hope to be from your trauma going viral enough to bring you the donations that you need, or being one of the first ones on the scene of an airdrop and fighting over bags of rice, filtering water out of mud. Like, it's just, I can't even put into words how degrading and disgusting this entire dynamic is. And as you said, it's, whenever I'm watching and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even watch. And I'm like, but there are people who are living through it who don't have the option to turn off the phone, to look away, to say, oh, this is too unbearable. It's like they are forced to bear it, and they have been forced to bear it. And yes, this problem has gotten worse, but it's not been just the last 2 years. This has been decades and decades.
Yeah, and it's always important to note that, we live in a time where history is being rewritten, right? Where history is being erased. And at the very least we can do is bear witness to what is happening. So that way we can never be gaslit to believe that the reality of what we're seeing is not real. More than 2 million people, fathers, mothers, children, babies, grandparents, faith leaders, advocates, journalists, medics, neighbors are dying because their bodies are shutting down without the proper fuel and nutrients needed to carry on. And in the name of what? As many people are recognizing, this feels like a slow execution. We can't look away.
Yeah. This is why we reiterate that this famine is not naturally occurring, because sometimes we use language that is very passive and doesn't put a name on who is perpetrating the violence. Someone is meticulously making this happen in this way. Someone is meticulously putting out orders that says, don't let the aid in through the borders. I mean, literally, there will be food and water miles away, and it just won't be allowed through these checkpoints and through these gates. So this is why we have to reiterate, this is not a unexpected disaster. People are starving because those in power within the apartheid state of Israel want them to be starving. And that makes the state-sanctioned violence.
Yeah, and collective punishment, particularly in the face of bombing, of the fact that we have seen bombs dropped on hospitals, the annihilation of healthcare workers, civilian infrastructure have been attacked left and right. And according to UNICEF, only 40% of the drinking water production facilities are still functioning on the Gaza Strip. No fuel has been allowed into Gaza since March, which would also be necessary to reach services by car or operate food and electrical equipment. This is intentional and coordinated in every way. And to be honest, Gaza is not, and the Palestinian people are no strangers to Israel limiting water and fuel and internet into their communities. But we've never seen anything like this before.
Yeah. And there are people and groups on the ground that are doing their absolute best to provide aid. They're really strapped for resources. They're battling the same over-policing and threats from the Israeli military because providing aid could be a death sentence in Israel and Palestine. And so many can't keep up with the overwhelming need, and they shouldn't have to be doing this alone. So we're going to reiterate this multiple times throughout the episode, but please support those who are vetted, trusted on the ground. The Samir Project is one that I love to support personally. Mm-hmm. They are running projects all throughout Palestine, and they need your donations to keep going. You can find them on Instagram at the Samir Project. The link in their bio has resources for supporting North Gaza, South Gaza, Central, other parts of Palestine. And there's so many others who are trying to do this work too, but these are folks who are within the borders, who with your donations can get more and more aid and will not be stuck at checkpoints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Folks are pushing back. They are creating resources. They are televising what needs to be said. And the fight for Palestinian liberation intersects, which reminds me, as someone who is a Black American, that the fight for Palestinian liberation intersects with the Black struggle and has always done so. From the militarization of police to media censorship to the playbook is very familiar. Since 2021, we also saw the Movement for Black Lives release a powerful statement in support of Palestine, saying Black liberation is tied to the liberation of all oppressed people. And let's not forget, in Ferguson, Palestinian activists were tweeting protest tactics to Black organizers during the uprise. And I also just read an amazing article that documented that during the Hurricane Katrina, you had Palestinians that raised $10,000 to send to the victims of Hurricane Katrina. And this is not just a recent solidarity. You can look back all the way to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, who understood that our liberation was deeply tied to one another because our oppressors are the same, one and the same. And you can look at what's happening in the Congo and Sudan. They're all interconnected. Our suffering is being orchestrated by the same oppressor.
Yeah. And that's not, it's not symbolic to say that we are interconnected. I love that you brought up those specific examples of our solidarity, but also our oppressors are interconnected. The Israeli government has trained hundreds of US police departments and vice versa. They share tactics, they share crowd control strategies, they share surveillance materials. So when we talk about abolition and demilitarization, Palestine is absolutely a part of that conversation.
Yeah, not to mention the billions of US tax dollars funding Israel occupation, money that could be going towards reparations, healthcare, education, housing for communities right here in the US. You have folks, we are paying for the healthcare and education of communities outside of our borders, and yet folks are barely getting by here. So yeah, if you're trying to figure out how your life is connected, it is directly connected by the decisions made by our legislators, but also what our tax dollars are being used for and the violence that is being created in our name.
Yeah. And though things have gotten extremely, extremely dire since Trump has taken office, we know that this problem has existed and persisted long before, precisely because of that interconnectedness. I mean, the Biden administration also had unflinching support for Netanyahu. So we're seeing a serious fracture between younger voters and all elected officials, not just in the Party, but also in the Democratic Party. This is not just a foreign policy issue. It's a justice issue. It is a human rights issue. It is, as you said, a crimes against humanity issue. And we're not going to shut up about it. We need to put our money where our mouth is. We need to put our votes where our mouth are. We need to show up for boycotts and all different things. And I'm excited to dig into what that looks like, because as you said, we don't have the luxury of feeling hopeless right now. We have to do
we don't have Yeah, we don't have the luxury to turn away. We're going to take a quick break, but we're super excited to bring up our special guest to help us unpack this dynamic and to take us deeper into a conversation of, not only what's happening, but what we can do moving forward. We'll be right back. You're watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. I'm really excited about our next guest. I've been following him on TikTok for a while.
Same.
And so when Jamira was like, yes, we're going to bring on Tariq, I was like, okay, so joining us now is Tariq Ra'ouf, an incredible Palestinian writer and poet. He's a culture worker and racial justice advocate who has bylines in Variety, Mashable, the San Francisco Chronicle, IGN, AV Club, Nerdist, many, many, many others. His distinct voice and activism not only shine through his written words, but also his TikTok, where he leads conversations and directs his more than 100,000 followers across these TikTok and Instagram towards critical calls to action. So I'm really excited to bring him up so that we can dig into what we can materially do. It's not enough to just say that we're against the violence. We've got to be about it. So welcome, Tariq.
Hello. Hi.
Oh,
I had no idea I had over 100,000 followers on those platforms. What the
We're here to do the numbers for you.
The influence is real. The impact is real. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
I
crazy.
think what I appreciate most about you is that, like, you were talking about, not a lot of people were talking about this in October 7th, right? Like, not a lot of people stood 10 toes down and pointed out what was happening. And, I really love for you to, first and foremost, can you underscore for our listeners what we're witnessing right now did not start on October 7th, 2023, because far too many of us are zoomed in on the Hamas rhetoric and the narrative that has been pushed to all of us, not recognizing the implications of how Hamas evolved, right? Like, who supported it, but also the fact that this has been, we're talking about a group of people who have been in an open air prison for decades, had their land stolen. They have been pushed off their native land and not have had an international stage to really raise awareness in a way that now has shifted the international consciousness. So yeah, would really love for you to kind of lay the groundwork for our listeners who may not know as much as the three of us to be able to understand how this conflict continues to evolve.
Yeah. That was such a light subject, very easy to touch on.
I know, right? We put all the responsibility on you.
Well, so what's wild is all of this stuff that I'm about to speak on, and what I can speak on, is stuff that I've only even started learning over the past few years. I speak from an angle where I'm just getting back into my culture, because I spent 20 years of my life avoiding Palestine, avoiding my culture, much like many of your audience members probably, because it seemed too massive. I wanted to be that American happy kid growing up. I didn't want to be involved with all the freaking terrorism that I was seeing on my screens post 2001. I was like, that's not who I am. I'm, like Kyle XY. I'm like this, like the normal average American kid. Like, that's why I changed my name to Kyle. Yeah. So it's and so when I talk about it, I have to remind people that this is something that I'm only learning myself, and it is very possible to learn in a relatively short amount of time, right? Like, what I do know, and the stories that I grew up with, are that my family were based in Gaza and Lifta. My dad's family was in Gaza. My mom's family was in a village called Lifta. Lifta is now a world heritage site, and Israel announced a few years ago that they have plans to destroy Lifta because they want to build on top of it, of course. And so this all started, people even want to say that it started in 1948. The Zionism project to colonize Palestine started before 1948. This started in the late 1800s by a man named Theodore Herzl. He's the father of Zionism. And so this has been a long time coming, and it is all, and people want to resort to World War II as the thing that like caused a lot of people to that caused like Israel to be created, but people wanted Israel to be created before World War II. So this is it's been a very long time coming, and my family has been displaced from their homes in Lifta and Gaza. They moved to Ramallah. They moved to other places, and they eventually ended up. My family ended up in Michigan. My dad's family ended up in Jordan.
Wow.
All that to say, I feel like I'm ranting. Is that, like, when you talk about Palestine, it's so critical that you understand that it is a bottle that has been filled with pressure, and it's been pressurized, and it's been building and building and building because we've been constantly getting killed and killed and killed and killed, to the point where in 2007, when they decided to blockade Gaza illegally, people started getting fed up with the fact that they couldn't leave their own land. They couldn't travel to their relatives in the West Bank, which is like less than 100 miles away. Right. It's what happened on October 7th was what happens when you oppress people for decades and decades and decades and decades. And one thing that I really want to make very clear, and I apologize if I'm ranting. So
no, that's great.
One thing that I want to make very clear are two things. One is this idea of like building on illegal land, right? Or this mention that what Israel's doing is illegal, because a lot of people just kind of bypass over that, and they don't really listen to like illegal settlements. They hear the word illegal settlements and they're like, whatever, like, you're just jealous because they're here, right? In like Gaza and the West Bank, per the UN, are literally supposed to be run by Palestinians. It's Palestinian territory. They're supposed to have control over every single thing. It is supposed to be ran by Palestinians. So when we say illegally occupied, we mean that Israel is literally not allowing the Palestinian people the right to their own land that they were given in the 60s. So it's not like we're just jealous that they're here and they've been here for decades, since 1948, and we're calling you illegal. Is that, like, per international law, quite literally, Palestinians have every right to self-determination in those lands. And so and in 2007, Israel was like, no, we're going to blockade Gaza. And it's not, I want to be very careful about calling it an open air prison, because then it paints this concept of Gaza being this modern city, of it being just this place that people were like put into, right? Gaza is thousands of years old. They are some of the very first churches in the world are in Gaza. We're in Gaza. It is an ancient land. It is like a land that should be honored, just like the way that like Jerusalem is honored, the way that Egypt is honored, right? It is ancient. We have deep ties to that land, not just as Palestinians, but as humanity, because this is where humanity was like civilization thrived in this part of the world way back when, right? And so we don't look at that. We just see modern fences. We see the destruction, and we modernize it to the point where, like, oh, well, that's okay. But like, you don't think about the history loss. And then my second point is just that, like, oh God, I lost my second point. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
It's okay. It'll come back to you.
I'll probably just rant, so I apologize. It's really crazy because this is a war of words as much as it is a war of weapons, and you want to be able to that you think about it in ways that you've never thought about it, because otherwise you're never going to really fully understand the grasp of just how massive and unfair and how wrong it all is.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for breaking that down, and I appreciate you going back to early 2000s and even 20th century, because I think that does show how long it's going. And what's so interesting is that white Americans are very obsessed with revenge culture. I mean, some of the biggest movies, like you think like Taken, is like a white dad who's like, I will go to the ends of the earth and kill anyone who harms this loved one. But you can't imagine a parent somewhere else in the world, a child who was born into this sort of violence, feeling that same level of like, I need to get retribution. And so I think it's just so it's so hypocritical how revenge and retribution is like put on a pedestal in some senses, and then it's like, you don't have a right to self-defense, and how dare you be angry in another. Because I'm like, white Americans would quite literally tear down a city if their hockey team lost. Let alone
they've done it in Philly.
Literally have done it. Like, so like, don't tell me that you wouldn't respond very similarly if you and generations of your family were subjected to the violence that Palestinians have been subjected to. And so I appreciate you naming that, because people who are just like, but October 7th, and it's like, but since 1948.
And October 6th or October 5th or October 4th or October 3rd. There were things Palestinians were being killed then. Right?
Yeah.
Like
it's the disproportionate. Oh, sorry to interrupt you.
No.
The disproportionate response is wild, especially considering that like again, you want to talk about the legal terms. You want to talk about like how people are actually thinking about these things. And when people are occupied under international law, it is their right to self-defense. So what happened on October 7th specifically is that Hamas targeted military outposts, and they destroyed the fence that was illegally keeping them in. There was a lot of chaos that happened after that. But the act of Hamas targeting a military outpost to get out and to break the blockade, that is legal under international law. Not talking that every single thing that happened on October 7th was legal, but armed resistance is legal under international law. But then you go on Piers Morgan and you go on these fucking shows and they're like, do you condemn Hamas? And it's so outrageous because no one is being asked, do you condemn Israel for the starvation of all these children? It's mind-boggling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What's going to bring go ahead, Jamira.
I was just going to say, that being said, right, like the dehumanization of forcing people to try to this way of words of who they have a right to, who has the right to self-determination, who has the right to defend themselves. And it also calls into question when we think about the dynamics of the human rights violations that is preventing people from getting access to water and food, right? Most of the focus has only been around children. The children are suffering, but also women and men are also suffering in these inhumane conditions of all ages. Can you expand on that and why we need to broaden our conversation around who deserves access to resource, who deserves access to justice, who deserves access to pushback of all ages, regardless of whether or not they're just children?
Oh gosh, yeah. It is, I mean, that's part of the dehumanization, like you said, is we have to fight so much harder to be seen as human. And for some reason, our men aren't seen as human at all, because our men are part of the stereotype that Hollywood has been feeding the world for generations, right? The angry Arab, the dangerous terrorist, the tropes that made me hide away from my cultural identity for 20 years. And is one of the things that makes it so much harder for us to be seen as human. And so it's it's wild because I think I'm trying to wrap my head around how to answer this. I'm wondering if you can reframe the question in a way so that, because I'm having trouble
I would say Yeah. Why is it important to recognize, I would say, considering the conversation that has been happening around access to food and water, why is it
Mm,
important for us to recognize both how children are suffering, but also the dynamic that these are inhumane conditions for folks of
mm,
all ages, both women and men, and why we shouldn't just totally focus on like making the children human, but also the adults who also are suffering under these conditions.
Right,
mm,
because and then if you can expand on, you can sort of dig into that if we're only centered around children, and
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well now I only want the aid to go to the women and the children, and it continues that Hollywood narrative that you just mentioned
mhm,
around, okay, and so Arab men are not allowed to be angry and hungry and also need aid, and like so we're okay with starving older people, but not those under
yeah,
5. Like, where are we drawing lines here? Where's the line in the sand?
mhm. Yeah, so the concept of like prioritizing women and children, really just like erases the idea of just Palestinians being innocent in general.
Hmm.
And it's wild to me because you want to use the image of women and children because it's one of those things that like invokes emotion in like a general population, and it gets people to be like, oh well, like the women don't deserve it, the children don't deserve it, but neither do the men, right?
Yeah.
And the thing that like really haunts me is the fact that people consistently talk about the hostages, and then compare the hostages' innocence to like the women and the children, but like there are thousands of men in illegal Israeli prisons being held right now. They are literally hostages of their own,
Right.
but we
Mm.
don't talk about them. We don't consider the Palestinian prisoners as hostages, even though Palestinian prisoners can, like the judicial system in Israel, they can arrest any Palestinian that lives in the West Bank or in Gaza or in we call it the 48. We don't call it Israel because so they can arrest anyone for any reason and not give them a reason, not give them a lawyer, and to tell them they're in detention for an undetermined amount of time. And
Wow.
that idea of imprisonment like tacks onto this concept that like just by our existence we're not innocent. And so it's like you really have to look at it through a lens of like the Palestinian people are an innocent people that are being subjected to horrific violence simply because the oppressors want the land.
Hmm.
There's a really great book by a woman called Ahed Tamimi. Actually, oh yeah, right here.
I
It's
have
called
that
like
book. It's so good.
They Call Me a Lioness, a Palestinian girl's fight for freedom. So Ahed Tamimi, she went viral like 10 years ago or so, because or not 10 years ago, but like a little while ago. She went viral because uh a picture or a video of her slapping a soldier went viral on Facebook.
I remember
It
that.
was wrongly captioned as a Ukrainian soldier or a Ukrainian girl slapping a Russian soldier. Turns out, no, it was a Palestinian girl slapping an Israeli soldier. And I had Dina Tagruri is an AJ Plus journalist, so she worked with Ahed to translate Ahed's story. This is a powerful narrative of how Palestinian innocence just gets caged and
Hmm.
treated like shit because they don't want it to exist. And this is such a powerful narrative of showing people what happens even to the children and the women in Israeli prisons. And so it's just like it's crazy the concept of having to fight for our innocence when innocence is just so easily given to so many other groups in this world.
Yes. Oh my God. So real. And thank you for bringing her work up. That's definitely a book that people should get. In your opinion, there's so much attention on we need a ceasefire. We need a ceasefire. Is that a sufficient call to action? If not, what should we be calling for?
Yeah.
Mm. We need an end to the illegal blockade on Gaza that has been in
Hmm.
existence since 2007, and we need Palestinian self-determination. And we need Palestinians to be the ones to determine whether or not they want to participate in a two-state solution or a one-state solution. That solution should be up to the Palestinians to make, and not
Yeah.
for Europe or like any other Western powers to determine.
And the last time Palestinians were able to actually vote on this was before a lot of Palestinians were alive, right?
Yeah.
Or of age,
people keep saying that, like, oh, well, they voted for Hamas. I'm like, I think maybe 8% of the population that's alive today in Gaza voted for Hamas. Like, not even, like majority of them weren't even alive. So it's like self-determination is what we need. We need self-determination, an end to the blockade, and an end to the occupation. It's not simply about a ceasefire at this rate. I mean, like, you know, having lost 44 family members in the last 2 years, it has been outrageous to see people advocating for just a ceasefire, because it's like, I mean, our family has lost more people than just in the past 2 years. But because in the past 2 years, we've lost 44 family members, now people are saying, well, we need a ceasefire. Ceasefires aren't enough. We need an absolute end to the occupation.
Couldn't agree more. And, you know, we started this conversation off talking about why it's important for us to be in solidarity with each other because of our collective oppressor, right? Like organizing behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, creating these unbearable conditions for many of us to live in. And, you know, you have faced the repercussions of speaking out, like the punishment of speaking out. So many of my friends have faced not getting their book published, not limited job opportunities, you know, but the solidarity is still needed. How have you navigated this, and what piece of advice would you give for other folks who are still scared?
Oh, gosh. All right. Sorry, it just makes me laugh.
I know, right?
Yeah. So for those of you who might not know, I'll just give you just the tiniest bit of background. Is I worked for Apple for 12 years. Worked at the Apple store. My job fixing iPhones or whatever. And I started working there before I started being into my heritage. And then as soon as I started being into my heritage, started wearing a Palestinian flag pin. And then Apple told me that I couldn't wear the pin anymore because the Zionist couple complained about it. And they said that me wearing the pin in and of itself was political solicitation. That's what I started going down this rabbit hole, trying to be like, how does Apple feel about Israel? And then I discovered that Apple was massively Zionist. I spent years of my what is the career? Thank you. I've been spending years of my career at this company only to find out that all this time that I spent, I work for a company that is doing things that I just don't believe in anymore. And I had to speak out against it because I knew that it was wrong. It went against everything that they were telling the world about who they were and what they believed in. And it felt like it was my moral duty to speak up and tell people about it. And oftentimes people don't know about what's going on in Palestine. They don't know enough. They don't know like the extent of how racist and horrific their employers could be. But then when you start digging into it, you start realizing, oh my gosh, this is like absolutely not what I had expected at all. And I started speaking out because I knew that the only way that we could ever change this world is if we speak up against the injustices inside of it. And I am lucky that I had a community of like-minded people that kind of knew and understood what Palestine was going through. Yeah. And so if people are just starting to dive into this and just starting to realize like, oh my gosh, like my employer is complicit, or someone that you know is complicit or supports this stuff. Like, I think the first thing that you need to do is find the people that understand. We are everywhere. It's not nearly as hard to find a Palestinian supporter as it is in the past. And just do what you can to speak up against it, and know that speaking about Palestine is going to make people uncomfortable. But you don't change this world by being comfortable. You change this world by going through discomfort, either yourself or having other people have to face the horrific discomfort of what a genocide, what apartheid, what ethnic cleansing means. And it can be really difficult, especially if you are one of the only people in your community, one of the only people in your circles that are really starting to open your minds up to the extent of all of this. But like, there are so many Palestinian organizations, like grassroots organizations in so many towns around the world. There are so many platforms on social media. There's so many websites and organizations that you can go to try and be connected to the people that understand. And once you're connected to the people that understand, then once you start feeling a little bit more confident about like, okay, I thought this was complicated. It's not that complicated. What can I do to help? Then you start affecting your own circle. We don't have to change the entire world. We don't have to think about all of the people that are like voting for, Donald Trump. It's not our job to change all of those minds. It's our job to change the minds of our neighbor, of our coworker, of our classmates, because that is how the revolution begins. It starts with us by speaking to every single person around us.
Yes.
Yeah, I needed that.
Yeah. We have to make it insane to not be talking about it, to not be doing something about it. I mean, you kind of already dug into this as far as what can people do, but is there anything else that you would say you want our listeners to know about how they can step up in this moment, or about how they can support you in your work?
Yeah. I think the most important thing is just do what you can to learn what you can. There are so many resources that you can use to learn about the extent of what's happening. There's so many, like the 1,000-year war on Palestine by oh gosh, I don't have that book next to me.
I'm gonna go up and see if I have it on my shelf.
I have it somewhere.
I'm trying to remember Rashid Khalidi. Thank you. So the 1,000-Year War by Rashid Khalidi is a great historic look at how Zionism began in the early 1800s, kind of like I mentioned earlier in this video, and it goes up to like the late 90s, early 2000s. It's really, really, really good. It's essential reading if you want to know the facts of what happened, because he uses so many great resources. And then, look up Palestinian content creators. It's so interesting. I don't know much about Palestine. I just know what I've learned in the past few years. But there's so many content creators out on Instagram, on TikTok, that post daily about what's going on. I don't have the mental capacity for that. But if you just want Palestine in your feed a little bit more often, and you just feel like you want to be exposed to it, and maybe you're not a reader, maybe like you don't want to go into a heavy documentary, add it to your feed. Find a social media person that you like, and then you'll get the bits and pieces, and then eventually maybe one time you'll see a video that they post that like really gets you, and then that'll be the thing that drives you to the book or to the documentary. That's what I really recommend. And if you want to follow me, I am on TikTok and Instagram, and it's Tariq_Raouf. And I post what I can. My big thing is about big tech's complicity, because I got fired from Apple, and tech makes up 30% of Israel's economy. Tech makes up a huge factor. Tech is massive. They have invested so much, and every single tech company that we use, 99% of them are all complicit in operating in an apartheid state, knowing for years that it's been an apartheid state before this genocide even began. Wow. So that's what I talk about. I talk about how deep tech is into this like racism. And so like, if you want to know more about that, I guess that's what I'm good for.
No, we appreciate it. You're good for I've learned so much from your videos and your resources, but we really appreciate you joining the show, and hopefully we can have you back in the near future. Hopefully we're celebrating the stop of what is currently happening. So thank you for joining us, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day. For those who are watching, we're going to take a quick break. You're watching On the Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds. As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting. We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance.
We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
Welcome back to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. That was a heavy and somber conversation, but rightfully so. We are, we can each be doing more and we should be doing more in this moment that is impacting the Palestinian people, generally to make state-sanctioned violence and famine a thing of the past.
Yeah, that's right. From Palestine to Sudan to the Congo and beyond, people deserve to eat. That's not a radical thing to say, especially in a world of so much wealth. Do not accept the lie that these issues are too complex for you to be able to speak on, that you need degrees to be able to speak out. It is really simple. Don't starve people. If you do want to read up and be more informed, get into They Called Me a Lioness by Ahmed Tamimi, also Genocide Bad by Sim Kern. There are so many books by Palestinians, by Jewish allies that you can dig into. And as Tariq said, one of the best ways is to just make this a regular part of your feed. Follow and support the work of folks like at the Samir Project, at I.on.Palestine, at El Sarsour, Linda Sarsour, Dream Defenders, Eyewitness Palestine, and Black for Palestine to stay engaged.
Absolutely. You've been watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network. And as always, until next time, never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. See you next time.
Hello.